Malcolm Roberts, the Senator for Queensland with Pauline Hanson's One Nation, is on the line. Senator, appreciate your time this morning.
Well, good morning, Peter. You're welcome, and thank you for the invitation.
You've spoken to veterans and current troops about this. What's the feeling on the ground?
The morale in the Australian Defence Forces is very, very low. It's catastrophically low, and that impacts on our future security. And that's why it's so important to raise these issues. The feeling across the ADF is that the top brass in the ADF are not accountable. The top brass are throwing enlisted people, vets under the bus and taking credit for things that they don't deserve credit for.
I think what people need to remember here, Senator, is that Angus Campbell himself tried to remove some 300 medals.
You're absolutely correct, and your introduction was first class, right on target. He not only got this third highest military decoration, the Distinguished Service Cross, as you pointed out, but he got it for supposedly distinguished command and leadership in action as commander of forces in Afghanistan. That makes him, under the Yamashita doctrine, which says that a senior officer is responsible, even if he doesn't know about it, of all any crimes or breaches of law in junior people. Mm. So he is responsible for the accusations, or not? He's responsible for the so-called crimes or alleged crimes in Afghanistan. Yet, at the same time as he was getting a Distinguished Service Cross, and he wasn't in action, so he's not entitled to it, he was trying to strip the medals from people in I think 3,000 medals for meritorious service. Meritorious unit citation. So he's being hypocritical here, in my view, completely hypocritical. And the men see that. Men and women in the Australian Defence Forces see that.
The DSC is awarded for, quote, distinguished command in leadership in action as a commander for forces in Afghanistan. At the time, the criteria for someone to receive the award, Senator, required them to be, quote, in action, means under direct fire. But now, somewhere out of nowhere, 3 months later, Angus Campbell has recommended to receive the award, the rules were changed. So it stinks to high heaven.
It does. And, you know, he was based in an air-conditioned headquarters in Dubai for much of the time. Admittedly, he was, for a third of the time, based over there in Afghanistan, but he was never under direct fire. You know, the soldiers, the grunts, they have a word for it. It's a two-way rifle range. I mean, you got incoming fire. He was never under incoming fire. We even got it through an FOI, Freedom of Information request, for dates, I'll quote this, for dates and places where General Campbell was physically present during a specific action involving direct conflict between opposing forces. No documents were found, and a defence decision maker stated that they were satisfied, satisfied that documents do not exist.
So there's no proof he was ever under fire?
Correct, and Angus Campbell was asked directly at Senate estimates, was he, and in what specific action was he involved? No action was provided. So he didn't get it based upon the correct criteria, and that's for awarding the Distinguished Service Cross, and that's what troops are very upset about. One rule for the seniors and one rule for the rest.
So it now states that you only have to serve in warlike operations. So to me, Senator, on the outside, and to my listeners, it would seem that Angus Campbell has simply changed the rules on the way out the door to keep his medal.
Someone's changed the rules, and I agree with you, that would seem to be the motive. But at the time he was awarded, at the time of nomination, the criteria was in action. He did not comply with that. I believe, and many troops believe, that he got his Distinguished Service Cross illegally.
Very interesting.
And worse, he tried to take medals off meritorious unit citations off 3,000 people simply because the Burton report made allegations. Now, only one person has been prosecuted. No one has been found guilty of committing a crime, but here he was trying to take 3,000 medals off people.
But should people like Angus Campbell be receiving any medals, Senator? I mean, he's a bureaucrat.
Well, essentially, that's the argument. And what it seems to be is that he was nominated by his second in charge at the time, Johnston. And I've forgotten Johnston's first name, but and Johnston is now the incoming chief of the Australian Defence Force.
David Johnson, Admiral David Johnson.
Sorry?
Admiral David Johnson, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. That's right. Now, what it seems to be is that the senior brass in the Australian Defence Forces think that they get medals as they get salary. That's not the case. Medals are there for a specific criteria, and the criteria were breached by the nomination of General Angus Campbell.
Finally, Senator, what happens from now? What do we do next?
We've got a Senate inquiry. I moved a motion in the Senate to call a Senate inquiry. That was supported, thankfully, by the crossbenchers and by the Liberal Nationals. It was opposed by the Labor Party and the Greens, including David Shoebridge, which stunned me. I can't see why you would want to oppose this. But can I take the opportunity?
Of course you can.
It's about about backing the troops and getting them the recognition they deserve. And I want to thank all Australian Defence Forces people for their service. They're wonderful, Peter. They really are.
Senator, they certainly are. And before I let you go, I do have Wes Hennessy, who's a decorated former SAS soldier, a commando, who will be on the program tomorrow. I'll put this to him, wonderful. Senator. But I also just wanted to remind you, before I do let you go, that, Senator, when the Brereton report was first being handed down and they started to investigate soldiers, and then they were then talking about stripping some, I said 300, my apologies, 3,000 medals, it put many of these soldiers that were already suffering some form of PTSD through the ringer.
Exactly. They don't seem to be caring at all about the troops. And I want to point out that if anyone's thinking of making a submission to this inquiry and you're worried about the pressure or the fear of reprisals or coercion, interference or punishment, don't be concerned about that, because the Senate inquiry protects people who make submissions, and if someone does try to coerce you, then you just report it to the Senate committee, and the Senate committee treats that as a matter of contempt against the Senate. It's pretty serious stuff. But the other thing is that anyone wanting to make a submission can do so in confidence. So you can do it publicly and you get the protection of the Senate, or you can do it with the protection of privacy.
Senator, I understand you're on the road this morning. I'll let you go, and safe travels. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Peter.
There he is, One Nation Senator Malcolm Roberts. Makes a lot of sense. How's that? How does that sit with you?